Ready?
I'll call this meeting to order, and
I nominate Gary Hertzberg to chair the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Democracy is wonderful.
Yeah.
Okay, now you can go.
okay, I'll do roll call quickly.
Yes.
Joe Zitzelberger,
Here.
Kristen Runge,
Here.
Phil Random,
Here.
Chris Elman, Phil Willems,
Here.
Aaron Moran,
Here.
Gary Hertzberg.
Here. Consent agenda.
Wait.
I will confirm,
You've got
one thing to do.
Strike.
I will confirm that the draft agenda was published in the Wanakee Tribune on November 28th. The final agenda was posted on November 27th at all 3 village posting locations, and the final agenda will be publicly available online on November 22nd.
Excellent. Now we'll look at the consent agenda. Is there anything that anyone wants to remove from the consent agenda or look for approval?
I would move approval of the consent agenda.
Second.
Motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Consent agenda passes. Public comment. Is there anyone in the audience that has any comment on something that's not on the agenda this evening?
We do have one slip from Steve Monk at 206 Winston Way.
Go ahead, Steve.
Well, I already talked to Kevin Turney about it, but got a permit to build a structure in my backyard on, I think it was April 3rd this year. And it took me a while. We got plans finally developed, and I got about $14,000 invested in this through Morton Buildings. And then they put a stop on it on Halloween, basically saying I violated Trans 57 and there's safety concerns. And I thought I've sent emails saying I'm not violating Trans 57. I got the Department of Transportation Compliance Manager to say I'm not violating Trans 57. And I still haven't got my permit turned back on. I lose a $3,000 winter build project if I don't get my land ready. So I said I'm already 14,000 in the hole, and I'm not sure what to do at this point. I know you wanted me to fill out more forms for the FAA and get more, but the FAA doesn't really care about the Wanakee Airport, so they say they don't enforce any rules because it's a privately owned airport. So I don't know what to do at this point. I'm out, either I'm out 14,000, I can't build, or my permit gets turned back on, or
That's your time, sir.
sorry.
Okay. Thank you, Steve. And I would assume that staff would be who you communicate on any of
We
those
talked,
issues.
but I haven't heard anything back since then.
Okay. Thanks. Is there anyone else?
I have no other.
Okay, we'll go to license and permits. And we have one operator license for Andrew Fountain.
We actually have
Three.
2.
Oh,
Wait, 3.
well, 3, okay.
So
Oh, Andrew.
included, I could include in your packet are license applications for Andrew Fontaine, Patricia Doyle, and Herbert Van Driel. Staff recommends approval of the operator license applications for these 3 individuals, subject to successful completion of an approved responsible server training course and review by the Wanakee Police Department.
I make a motion, we approve the operator licenses for Herbert Van Driel, Patricia Doyle, and Herbert Fontaine, subject to successful completion of an approved responsible beverage server training course and review by the Wanakee Police Department.
I'll second.
Okay, motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes. New business. Number 1 is to discuss and take action on the sale of overhead electric lines to American Transmission Company. And I assume Tim will handle that?
Good evening, everybody. Again, Tim from the Wanakee Utilities. Good to see you. Basically, what we're here to do is to seek board approval to sell a line to the American Transmission Company that feeds our substation on Easy Street. The line is at 69,000 volts, which is a transmission level voltage, where we don't have the equipment or the training for our people to work on the line. And the line extends about a mile. It goes from Easy Street south to 113 and west on Copp Road to to where it connects to a line owned by the American Transmission Company, or just right at the golf course. And the Utility Commission has discussed this matter several times. We've worked out a draft agreement with ATC to sell the property for about $102,000. We'll be able to maintain an existing line that is already, that's at a lower voltage, that will remain on the line. ATC will let us use that for free indefinitely. ATC will be responsible for the tree trimming and vegetation management going forward. And they've indicated to us that they will reimburse us for some or all of our legal costs involved with the transaction. Again, this line was put in a number of years ago. We always thought that we couldn't sell the line because it was originally purchased with debt, and we still hold the debt on the asset. We had reached out to our bond counsel, who said that is not, in fact, the case, provided that the village board declares it to be something that is not useful to the utility anymore. And if ATC owns it, it's not useful to us. Obviously, we still need the line to serve our substation, but in the legal terms from our bond counsel, we are able to sell it. So the recommendation that was approved by the Utility Commission was to sell the line. Gary and Chris are both on the Utility Commission. They indicated support for it, like I mentioned. And the recommendation to the village board is for the board to approve the sale, including a resolution that basically says that we're willing to sell the line and that the village president will be allowed to execute any further contracts associated with the sale. So, that I take any questions.
So I've got a couple of them. First one would be, are there other things other than that, 69,000 volt line and whatever other line utilities have on there?
There's nothing else on there.
Nothing else on
Yeah,
those
it's common sometimes to have communication lines on there, but
Yeah.
there's nothing else on there.
And then in looking in the long term, is there the potential that the utility may want to add some additional line to that? And is that a
Yep.
separate negotiation at that point?
That's a good
or-
question, and we talked about that with our operations folks, and they stated that anything that would be coming into that area and out of the area, especially around the substation, would go underground, and it wouldn't be on the
okay.
line. And the line is built where you really couldn't put much underneath there. So on top, you have the high voltage 69 line, then you've got the 12,000 volts, and there isn't enough, we have to maintain certain clearances
Sure.
below that 12,000 volt line, and there isn't room to do that. So
Okay.
we're kind of stuck with what we have.
Any other comments? I mean, again, the Utility Commission, we spent a number of months on this and, came back with a lot of questions for Tim, and in the end, it seemed like the right thing, we all agreed it's the right thing to do for the village, because we can't maintain it ourselves. So, I'd look for a motion.
I'll move to approve the resolution of the Wanakee Village Board authorizing sale of the transmission assets to the American Transmission Company LLC.
I'll second.
A motion been made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion approves. Number 2 is discuss and take action on the sewer rate adjustment. Tim, you're on again.
Yep, and again, I'm here tonight to talk about a recommendation from the Utility Commission to the Village Board to approve a rate increase effective January 1st, 2020. The water and the electric rates have to be approved by the Public Service Commission of Wisconsin, but the Public Service Commission does not regulate the sewer utility directly. And so therefore, the Village Board has the authority to set rates. The last rate increase was done earlier in 2019. That was to just pass through some costs from Madison Metropolitan Sewerage District through the rates. The rate increase that we're proposing for 2020 is 11.9% increase, which is about $258,000. There's 3 schedules that are attached that I have included in your packets that are from a larger rate analysis document that the Utility Commission reviewed. The first schedule, Schedule 1, it basically just provides a summary of the reasons behind the rate increase. The number one reason is because our treatment costs from MMSD are going up significantly. They are going up $182,000 in 2020. And MMSD costs represent 81% of our total cost to operate the utility. We actually had the MMSG director and chief engineer come out to our utility commission last week to talk about the reasons behind the increase. And there's really two things. One is they need to continue replacing their existing treatment plant. And actually three things: replacement of their equipment, existing equipment, the new growth in and around our area, and then the cost of new regulation for things such as phosphorus and chlorides. The other reason for the increase on Schedule 1 is because the Utility Commission has asked to increase the funding for our a vehicle replacement account to pay for a new sewer vacuum truck that is going to be coming due in the next couple of years. Schedule 20 has the impact on customers. The average residential customer will see a $4.60 increase each month. And other customers will change based on the volume that they send to us each month and the meter size that they have. The other schedule that's included in there is Schedule 21. That is a comparison of our rates to some surrounding communities. On the comparison, you can see that Wanakee's rates are a little bit higher than we had been. The one caveat on here, though, is that, and I've called out for the communities that are also served by MMSD, this compares our rates for 2020 to the actual rates for the other communities for 2019. And the impacts that the other communities that are served by MMSD aren't reflected in here because we aren't aware of what their new rates are going to be. And I also included a graph in there that showed the increase in our MMSD rates from 2010 to 2020. You can see there's a pretty sharp increase. And full disclosure, MMSD was really clear to us saying that they would expect to have further significant increases going forward to us and all the other members. And again, the recommendation from the Utility Commission is for the board to approve the rates as of effective January 1st, 2020.
Page 6 of 6, new business to discuss and take action on sewer rate. 42 of 62.
Change your voice, huh?
Interesting.
Looking at your crystal ball, what do you forecast for 21 and 22 and then beyond? Do you think this is going to hold for a while, or?
I would say that based on the costs that we can control, rates should be flat. But the costs that we don't have a lot of control in are the MMSD costs, and I would anticipate increases higher than inflation going forward from into 2021 and beyond, unfortunately.
And again, I think in the Utility Commission, we looked at this truck replacement, and, we're trying to forecast that out in the future, but put money away now so we don't get hit, 2 years from now if the truck goes down and we have to purchase one. We're trying to do the right thing here by building a fund up.
Well, based on the fact that what I see from our utility company is they control costs pretty good, I would recommend we approve the sewer rate increase effective January 1st, 2020.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you, Tim. Next, we have to discuss and take action on the animal license fee increase.
I'll talk about that. So when Dane County approved their budget in November, they also approved a $5 increase per dog license. So when we collect dog license fees, a significant part, about 2/3 of it, goes to the county, and we keep a very small portion. And so they have increased their rates by $5 per tag, and so we are proposing that we increase our rates accordingly, so that when it comes time that for us to remit their share, we have the extra $5 to do so. I did look back, and the license fees for dogs have not changed since 2009. And our village share of it hasn't increased since at least 2004. But the county has increased it about 3 times in the past 15 years or so.
Board members, any comments?
Good reason to get a cat, maybe?
Cat fees are the same.
Goldfish?
I'll move we approve the revised dog license fees as presented.
Second.
Okay, motion been made and seconded to increase the fees. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 4 is discuss and take action on ordinance repealing section 2-331 of the village code concerning the Wanakee Economic Development Commission.
And
Todd?
this probably feels like it's getting a little repetitive. We're on our third meeting on the topic, but it's all good. It's for the right reasons. And I appreciate the board's input and direction along the way as we worked on this. So 4 and 5 really are interrelated, as you recall, based on the way in which we care to proceed in modifying some of our organization here. So what very quick summary for those who maybe are watching and aren't aware. But the village has both Economic Development Commission, which has been in place for several years, as well as a Community Development Authority, which has also been in place for several years. The Economic Development Commission has had a series of obligations and duties, many of which have been accomplished, and the function of that committee is rather limited in terms of the duties that have been allowed to it by the village board. The village has a CDA, Community Development Authority, which hasn't been used at all. It kind of rests in the background as a method to make use of particular economic development tools that statutes afford CDAs to use. For example, conduit financing, which we coordinated to help the ice rink with refinancing back in 2010. It was the last time the CDA did anything. One result of the Housing Task Force's work over the course of the past year was to suggest establishing a body to put more attention to housing-related issues. And there's a number of recommendations that have been put forward in the Housing Task Force report, and we like to pursue evaluating those recommendations and putting them in form of policy suggestions or policy recommendations to the board. And what we've suggested here is that the CDA, by virtue of its ability to also act as a housing authority, be reinvigorated, essentially bolstered up, to really take on, as priority number 1, this litany of Housing Task Force recommendations. So what we're suggesting is to eliminate the Economic Development Commission, and Brian has crafted probably your shortest ordinance of all time. It may be, and that's in your packet, and that completes the simple task of abolishing the WEDC. And then after his review, and Brian chime in as well if you care to, but we believe that the resolution we have already established and approved by the village board is sufficient for that group to undertake and be invigorated with this new set of duties. So, assuming the board takes action on number 4 to abolish the WEDC and confirms our plan on number 5, which is to utilize the CDA, then over the course of the next month or so, we'll solicit the public for interested CDA membership, as well as offer existing CDA members the chance to reapply for seats on the CDA, and then bring those appointments to the village with the hope that you can appoint a new body, and then they can get to work in earnest come, late January, February timeframe, and then off we go with diligent work. So that's sort of the whole cluster of things that we're suggesting tonight. So maybe in combination, are there any questions about the scope of the work we're talking about?
Everybody on the board?
Well, we went over this at the last meeting and agreed to what's on here,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So we've put in order then the steps needed to take on that action.
I just have a question about the, I guess, logistics, or can we remove people from the CDA? Are we allowed to do that?
Well, the appointments are at
Because
the
we have-
board's
yeah.
discretion. Brian, do you have?
Yeah, I mean, I guess the question becomes, do we have people, what we'll have to look into is when, I think it's in May, that there's usually confirmation of the individuals on the bodies, what was done then, and then what ability we potentially have to make changes. But I think that's all part of what Todd was talking about, getting
Yeah.
done once you kind of, up to this point, it's all been discussion and background on the two topics that Todd identified. Tonight's the first time that you're being asked to actually take action, with then the expectation that there's essentially gonna be one more meeting where you'll have the action regarding membership of the CDA, and then the resolution that the village board adopted creating the CDA gives the CDA all of the statutory powers it needs, but then also essentially reserves to the village board the right to say, okay, we're essentially then going to have you act on those powers on a case-by-case basis. So when we come back at the, whatever meeting it is to talk about the membership, and whatever approvals are needed at that meeting too, you would also likely make a motion basically saying, as the village board, we authorize the CDA to start looking at the recommendations of the housing study to be able to make recommendations to the plan commission and the village board. I think that's what.
To Aaron's specific question, though, if the board appointed CDA members in May of this year, do they have authority to remove and replace with
Yeah,
others?
and that's something we'll have to take a closer look at.
I guess, yeah, that's my concern, we'll make sure we're doing
Yeah.
that.
So with that in mind, Brian, what I suggested a moment before is that we would solicit new members following tonight's meeting, if approved, as well as inform existing CDA appointees that if they're interested in remaining, they should reapply.
Yeah, and I think the one thing that we're gonna have to take a closer look at is, do they essentially need to reapply, or, you know, there is the potential that you might have members of the CDA who, since it has not been active for such a long period of time, basically say, you know what, I don't wanna be involved. And so I do think that we're gonna have to have communications with CDA members to see exactly what role they wanna play. I think the issue becomes, can they be removed? And if they can't be removed, then they just effectively have to remove themselves.
I was assuming that was kind of the will of the president, village board president.
And it may be, it's just that this is also like lots of the committees that we have, people are appointed based on our own ordinances that we have adopted. This is a statutory body.
Okay.
And so, there's usually language in the statutes that deals with, once you've been appointed, what is your term? And then there are ways that, you know, you certainly can resign from a body during your term. I don't think that we wanna, well, that's what we're gonna have to look at.
Okay.
Okay.
But I still think it all fits within what Todd had identified earlier.
Any other questions for Todd?
Step one, I move we approve the ordinance repealing section 2-0331 of the Code of Ordinances, Village of Wanakee, concerning the Wanakee Economic Development Commission.
Second.
Okay, second by Bill.
And just, I think it's a typo, there might be a typo there, it just, for clarification, it's section 2-331.
Well, then
I mean, that's all right, I
it
mean.
is two.
Yeah.
You're correct. Old eyes. I meant 3.
Okay, motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor? Oppose? Motion passes. We'll go on to number 5, which is to discuss and take action on the utilization of the Community Development Authority. And that's really part of, you know, Todd's already gone through what their role will be going forward, and I think we discussed it at the last meeting, so. Any questions?
And we did include in your packet that establishing resolution, and what we're seeking from you is to confirm the appropriateness of the 2011 CDA creation resolution. And the recommendation also, and Brian, tell me whether this should or shouldn't be included, to direct staff to solicit interest in CDA appointment.
I still think it's appropriate to have that, because we are gonna have to have communications, and certainly even if there's one member of the CDA who, for whatever reason, does not want to be a part of the body moving forward, we definitely would need to solicit, so I think it's still appropriate.
So Brian, do I need to abstain from this vote?
You do not.
Okay.
Okay,
Based on that, also, since this is what we wanted from the last meeting and what we wanted to move forward with, I make a motion, we move to confirm appropriateness of the 2011 CDA creation resolution and direct staff to solicit interest for CDA appointments for consideration by the village president and village board.
Second.
The motion been made in a second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Number 6, to discuss and take action on a settlement of ongoing litigation related to property at 844 Water Run in the village of Wanakee. The village board may convene in closed session as authorized by Wisconsin statute 19.851G for the purpose of conferring with legal counsel for the village board who is rendering oral or written advice concerning strategy to be adopted by the village board with respect to litigation in which it is likely to become involved. The village board may reconvene in open session to discuss and take action on the subject matter discussed in closed session.
So it's gonna be, it's up to you whether or not you all wanna go into closed session. I mean, we have a lot of information in the packet, in the issue summary. Essentially, this is a lawsuit that relates to the construction of a home. There are multiple defendants that have been named in the lawsuit, including the village of Wanakee. There is a settlement in concept, and I think it's basically just getting it down on paper at this point, that would allow, the lawsuit would go away, all claims against all of the defendants, including the village, would be gone. As part of the settlement, the village itself would not be making any payments to the plaintiffs. The village's insurance company would be chipping in on the settlement that is in excess of $500,000. The league would be chipping in $7,500. One of the reasons why insurance companies are willing to participate in settlements in this fashion is because the $7,500 that they would be contributing toward the settlement would in fact be less than the defense costs if this were to go to trial. And so it's, from the insurance company's position, it's clearly a monetary issue. But again, the village itself would not be making a payment. And, so if you want to get into the allegations and the defenses related to the claims, I think those would be appropriate to discuss in closed session. If you're comfortable with the information that I just provided and that's also in the memo, knowing that the village itself is not making any monetary contribution, you don't have to go into closed session and we can take care of this in open. The recommended motion is, what you don't have right now is the actual settlement agreement. I can tell you that it is kind of the standard boilerplate settlement agreement that you have in litigation. Waiver of all claims, identifies the payment that's going to be made. Truth be told, there's so many defendants and a lot of attorneys looking at this, so they're nitpicking it a little bit more than if you just have two parties involved. But it's beneficial to the village, and certainly the insurance company believes it's beneficial to the village and to the insurance company.
Thoughts, board members?
What it looks like, the insurance company, builder, et cetera, are taking the high road and buying these people out and satisfying their requests. And as such, I think we should approve the settlement agreement pertaining to the property at 844 Walter Run in the village, subject to the review and approval by the village attorney.
Is that that's a motion, okay?
I will second.
Second by Bill. Any additional comments? With that, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. One more motion.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Motion been made in second. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed?
The statutes on